Okay, so we are in John chapter 4, and we'll actually get into chapter 5 as well. We're in the last few verses of John chapter 4. Didn't quite finish that one up last week, and we'll see how far we make it through 5. 5 is pretty intense, but we'll make it as far as we can in chapter 5 as well. So we are in John chapter 4, beginning in verse 43. John chapter 4, verse 43. Here's what it says. After 2 days, he left there for Galilee. Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his own country. And when he entered Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him because they had seen everything he did in Jerusalem during the festival, for they also had gone to the festival. And so let's just pause there and kind of remind ourselves of the context. So last week we were, he had moved from Judea, which is in the south, if you remember the map that I drew on the board, and then he was heading towards Galilee. That was kind of his destination. Most of the Jews went around Samaria. Samaria is right in the middle, and we talked last week about why that is, why they hated the Samaritans so much. But Jesus was not like that. He had a divine appointment in Sychar, which is right over the border in Samaria. He made a beeline right into there instead of going around, and he talked to the woman at the well. So that's what we just did. And the result of that was that many people, there was this harvest, and many people were believing in him, first because of the woman's testimony, but then they proclaimed, now we believe you because we're hearing you, Jesus, and we're talking to you directly, which is really amazing. So there's this harvest that's there, and they begged him to stay even longer. And just think about how welcoming these Samaritans are to Jesus compared to the reception he's had from the Jews, which we're also going to continue to see today. So this now picks up after those 2 days that he stayed with the Samaritans. He continues his journey through Samaria into Galilee. So now he's back up north. And remember, he's done one sign there, the turning water into wine. And so it's interesting that he's heading back into that area. And this little parenthetical statement, some of your versions have parentheses around verse 44. Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his country. That's kind of a spoiler in a way that John is inserting this. He's like, by the way, it's not going to go so well with Jesus returning to his home country, okay? But at first, they're welcoming him. So it seems like, well, hold on a minute. Johnny said it was going to go bad, but, they're welcoming him because they'd seen the signs that he'd been doing in Jerusalem. That's sending us back before chapter 4. I believe it's at the end of chapter 3 where Jesus actually goes to Jerusalem, and we're not told all that he does there, but he does several signs, and people are believing in him, but he himself doesn't entrust them. Actually, this is in chapter 2 now that I think about it, because John says he knows the heart of man, and he knew that they didn't really believe him, they just wanted to see the signs. Then we have Nicodemus in chapter 3, that's an example of someone who is ready to believe. Okay, so that's kind of the context there. Well, let's continue this story. What does he do there? He went again to Cana of Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. There was a certain royal official whose son was ill at Capernaum. And when this man heard that Jesus had come from Judea into Galilee, he went to him and pleaded to him to come down and heal his son, since he was about to die. And Jesus told him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will not believe." "Sir," the official said to him, "come down before my boy dies." "Go," Jesus told him, "your son will live." The man believed what Jesus said to him and departed. Wow. Verse 51. While he was still going down, his servants met him and said that the boy was alive. He asked them at what time he got better. Now some of your translations will say something different. Mine is giving us kind of the modern translation of this, because it's hard for us to understand kind of the Roman and Jewish way of keeping time. Yesterday at 1 in the afternoon, that's the actual our time that it happened. Yesterday at 1 in the afternoon, the fever left him, they answered. The father realized that was the very hour that Jesus had told him, "Your son will live." So he himself believed, along with his whole household. Now this was the second sign Jesus performed after he came from Judea into Galilee. And for those of you keeping score, remember, Jesus is doing 7 signs, 7 big signs throughout John. This is our second one right here. We did the water into wine, and then we had a pause for 2 conversations that he had with key individuals, and now here is his second sign. All right, let's discuss this one together. What is it that you see here in this passage that really stands out to you?
He believed enough without seeing.
Yeah. Immediately. Just,
Yeah.
Oh. And especially, like, this is just amazing. Like, he's like, hey, come down and heal my son. And Jesus says, go, your son will live. Wow, Jesus can heal over Wi-Fi? Like, it just, I mean, it's amazing, right? Wow.
Well, you had to have some faith just to even go ask.
Yes, exactly.
Now, is he a Jew or is he a Roman soldier?
This says royal official. So, by the way, there are 2 different stories in 2 different Gospels that some people think are the same. And I think personally they're different, and there are people that believe that as well. One of them is a centurion,
Right.
whose servant is ill, same type of situation, and there's different dialogue that happens there. One of them's a royal official. A royal official is different from a centurion. Royal official's probably attached in some way to Herod's government. So he is likely a Jew, but Herod himself was he's like, oh gosh, he's a little bit confusing. I'm forgetting the details. I probably shouldn't say because I might mess it up. What is it? Idumean, yes. So it depends on how much into that court he is and where he comes from. We're not given the details,
There was
probably,
some
but
of them that I read was suspicious that this was Chusa,
oh,
husband of Joanna.
could be
Oh.
that. Yeah,
Suspicious, that's a speculation.
yeah, I could see
It
that.
would make sense on how Joanna ends up hooked
Mhm.
in Jesus as one of his disciples and stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting connection. I like that. But yes, so great faith that this guy has for sure, just to even make the journey, let alone, okay, yeah, I believe you, and heads back home. It's amazing. What else do you see here? Good insights.
I think it was interesting that he did the digging to connect the time to see that it was exact.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Or that even God put those words in the servant's mouth
Yeah.
to
Yes.
say those things, so that the ruler would put the 2 things together.
Yeah, exactly.
He thinks Jesus has to be in the presence of his son to cure him. Because he keeps saying, come.
Yeah. Doesn't need to. And that's important, right? Like, John hand selected these 7 signs for us, and he's deliberately skipping over some of the ones that the other Gospels have written about. And John is written much later, so he would have had access to the other Gospels, so he's deliberately choosing some that they do talk about, but many that they don't. But he's also has skipped over many others that Jesus did. And he says at the end of John, he did so many, we can't even write them all down. Like, there's just so many. So it's important for us to kind of think, so why this one? What does it tell us about Jesus? So what are your thoughts there? What is this? And we've kind of hit on some of this, but what does this tell us about Jesus?
Trust.
Yeah.
He's available for all of us.
He's available. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
That is-
He's available.
You only have to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In verse 48, do you think those words were, when I read them, I hear like myself saying them sarcastically.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that?
Probably. So if you take Jesus's attitude all together, especially remember when he weeps over Jerusalem, 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 how I've longed to, I'm paraphrasing here, cuddle you like a hen cuddles her chickens, but you wouldn't have it. I think that's his tone typically. He's not sarcastic, but he's more aggressive with the Pharisees than he is with the people, even the people rejecting him. So here, I would read that as just kind of sad.
Okay.
Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will not believe. And so that goes back to verse 44, John saying, like, here's what's actually happened. Like, his people are welcoming him, but he knows what's in their hearts. And so he's saying that. But then this official it's almost giving opportunity for this official to not prove him wrong, but to show something different.
Okay.
Like that's the heart of those people,
I got you. Yeah,
because
that
he
makes
doesn't say you, he says unless you people. So it's plural there, but here's one person. So just like we had in Jerusalem, Jesus wasn't entrusting himself to those people in Jerusalem because he knew it was in the heart of man, chapter 3 verse 1, but there was a man, Nicodemus, who came to him by night, and we find out later Nicodemus does believe. Same thing with the woman at the well. There was a woman who, and we have her story, and now here's this man who believes, while
so maybe
others
that's the
don't.
reason like John pulled this one out to disprove
Yes.
that. Okay.
Yeah. So in your notes, this is one to keep track of. Like the people aren't believing, but here they're demanding signs, but they're not believing the signs and the one they represent. But here's a man who does.
I think that's because you mentioned he was more upset with the Pharaohs, the
Pharisees.
I mean, because they're the teachers.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they're leading the wrong way. And
Yeah.
it's just like you are more responsible. You're responsible for what you teach.
Yes. Yes.
And more so, we're responsible to others, but you have a bigger responsibility.
And that is all through the Old Testament. He is always very harsh with the leaders. They are supposed to, the leaders are described often as watchtowers. And, the watchtowers were the early warning system that there's a problem, right? The enemy is coming. I see them on the horizon. They're sounding the alarm. And that was supposed to be the teachers, right? Weeding out false doctrine and making sure Israel is following God. And the Pharisees and others, Pharisees, Sadducees, and the scribes, had not been doing that. They had not been faithful to that.
Because they had pride
That's right.
and they liked the power.
That's right. And here's a man who believes, not only, believes Jesus at his word, and then just goes.
Well, I think we have to do the same, make sure that we're doing the same thing, that we're not depending on just signs and wonders, that we can get our faith strong enough to believe.
Yeah.
And it was like what the preacher was saying today, you can take your cares, leave them there, because that's what he did.
Mhm.
He told him, I'm worried about my son, Jesus said go, and he went, there was nothing more he could do.
Yeah.
I guess I want some signs and wonders for Kevin, my son, I want that because
Then that's probably
because
what
I
he
know
needs.
we brought him up in the Lord, and I know he accepted Christ as Savior, but he's having a very hard time right now.
My son's doing the same thing. He says, there's 3,000 gods. How do you know yours is the right one?
My
I
daughter's
want to
doing the
say,
same
how do you
thing,
know
too.
your teacher's the right one?
Yeah.
She's like, I can't believe in something I don't see. I'm like, okay, well, where does that fit in with all those invisible nouns?
Can't see around him.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
This man that was talking to Jesus, he actually should have been above Jesus in their society.
Yeah.
But he gave so much respect to Jesus by saying, "Sir."
Yeah, that's a
But
good
he
point.
was actually humbling himself before Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. Probably the word that's used here is kurios, which is Lord. Sir or Lord, right? Yeah, that is a very good point. Yeah. Wow. Well, let's move on from this sign. John is kind of rapid fire. We had two dialogues with individuals, and now we have two signs. Okay, so let's get into chapter 5 here. Third sign. After this, a Jewish festival took place, and so John, of the three gospels, well, maybe not. Mark is like immediately, like he skips through things really fast. Here, John is probably fast forwarding almost a year potentially, because we have another festival, probably the Passover, and he just came from the Passover likely. So we're probably skipping forward quite a bit of time here. After this, a Jewish festival took place, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Just as a side note, why does it say he went up to Jerusalem, which is in the south, and
Yeah,
he's in the
it's
north? That's the way they said it. They're going up to Jerusalem because Jerusalem is up geographically because of mountains, but also up because it's Jerusalem. It's the the mountain of the Lord, and so that's what they commonly said. So that's not an error. So he goes there. By the sheep gate in Jerusalem, there is a pool called Bethesda in Aramaic, which has 5 colonnades, and they have uncovered a place that they think it is this location there too, by the way. Within these lay a large number of disabled, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been disabled for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and realized that he had been there a long time, he said to him, now hold on a minute, I think, yes, sorry about that. This translation pulls that out. We need to talk about it. Let me get to my other translation here.
Which translation do you have that you were using?
This is CSB, and I have a CSB on my phone that includes this. So,
It pulled the whole verse out?
yeah,
Mine does too.
What
NIV does
translation
that.
do you have?
I have NRSV, I don't know.
okay. So, yeah, let's talk about this one. There's a couple of passages in John that are a little bit interesting that we need to discuss. So, I'm switching over to NASB on my phone here. I'm going to pick up in verse 2. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos. In these lay a multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, and withered, waiting for the moving of the waters. Verse 4, for an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water, and whoever went there first after the stirring of the water stepped in was made well for whatever disease with which he was afflicted. Okay? Some of your translations have verse 4, some of them do not. Okay? I'm sorry I didn't bring that. I meant to bring that up before we started chapter 5, and I thought mine had it in there, but it didn't. I'm reading from multiple translations and then forgot to double check. So, the reason for that, and for also we're going to see this in chapter 8 as well, is some of the earlier manuscripts that we have do not have that, but some of the later ones do. This is a subject that we can probably get much more into later if you'd like. We had talked about doing a how we got the Bible and kind of talking about some of the manuscript processes and discussing some of these issues. But we can talk about some of that now. This might be a good time to get into some of that, but we can go into more detail later if you would like. Generally speaking, when this happens, what's really amazing is that every single time something does not show up in earlier manuscripts, what we have is not something that contradicts other things in the Bible. Okay? So for example, in John 8, when we have a whole story that is not in the earlier manuscripts but is in later ones, and we wrestle with that, it's not material that is contradictory to the Bible. It's consistent with Jesus' character, it's consistent with what we know about him, it's consistent with the scriptures. This one as well. This one is an interesting one to talk about, which we're going to need to here in a second. But the reason why some translations take it out is it's not in some of the earlier manuscripts. The idea being that somebody added it later, which sounds like a conspiracy theory, and a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So it could be that it was in the original, but we don't have the originals anymore. These, most of the time, are written on pieces of paper from long time ago, right? And not the quality of paper that we have today, but papyrus, okay? And so we don't have the original, we have copies. However, all of the copies line up, but occasionally there are some older ones that have some sections that are missing. And so one theory is that this is in the original, but some of the scribes with some of the later manuscripts didn't copy that one over, or that it was a story that was passed around separately that John didn't write but was also included. John and Luke and Matthew, these writers of the Gospels, often pulled together eyewitness accounts for their stories, or they themselves were eyewitnesses. So it may have been one of those and was not included in one, but was included in many of the others.
That's really confusing to me,
So-
because Jesus says that you're not to change one word.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the King James Bible right here.
Mhm.
You ever seen the series Lamp
Lamp in the Dark. Lamp in the Dark.
No, I haven't.
It's a 2-hour documentary that explains
YouTube.
how the King James Bible came into
Mhm.
existence. All I know is that there's over 200 Bibles in the last 100 years, and they all charge you for them. You
Mhm.
pay them. There's no copyright on this King James Bible. Nobody
Yeah.
makes any money off this Bible. You know, I look at it like this. I'm an artist.
Mhm.
Straight line, upward and onward towards God.
Yeah.
And if you start removing key verses out of this book, that gets you off this much.
Mhm.
Well, you're gonna be a mile off, 10 miles down the road, you're gonna be 5 miles off the beaten path.
Mhm.
No, I'm not trying to
Sure.
say anything, but this really concerns me, especially
Yeah.
in the times that we're in now.
Yes.
There's Bibles that take out Christ's deity in John.
Mhm.
They take his deity away from him.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. Christ tells us not to change anything. And this is why I think it's so hard for us as believers today, because you're getting hit from all these different versions. There's all these different paths to God. Everybody worships the same God. It's not true. This is
Right.
the act of the devil.
Mm.
And I appreciate what you're trying to say to me up here. I really do.
Sure.
But we were told not to change one T or one I.
Right.
And to me, if I'm looking at the King James Bible and the NIV is taking this out, I don't look at the NIV and sit there and go, well, maybe in the past they didn't have this in here. They specifically took this verse out. For whatever reason, I don't know. I agree with what you say.
Sure.
When it doesn't change who Christ's character is. It doesn't do that.
Right.
But we're treading on dangerous ground. Because the
For
stakes are starting to
me,
get really
yeah.
high.
For me, I always default to what is in the Bibles that we've had, and so that's why I was like, oh, I forgot that this one removed that verse. But I always read through John 8, which we are going to do as well. I always include this verse as well. I think that's the safest position, because you're right. If we start asking that question, where does that lead us? But the more that I've studied the manuscripts, the more that I'm convinced that we have nothing to fear from that. Because usually what happens is a few years later, somebody makes a discovery, and then we realize, oh, yeah, this is secure. So I always default to this is what's in there. What I'm just trying to lay out is this is why some translations do that. This is also why I tell you to, it's good to read from multiple translations, which is what I always do as well, and compare them. Then when I see something, I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Read in and kind of understand some of that. And that also helps us from being blindsided, because a lot of people, like some of my professors at different universities that I've been to, that's the reason why they don't trust the scriptures. So they're like, well, there's so many different versions, or they don't match up. But if you do the research, they do. It is consistent. It's something that is difficult to talk about, and it's something that we should continue to be aware of and study as well. But yes, I always default to what is the scriptures that have been around. What do those say?
And so, are you looking at the Septuagint, or are you looking at the one that the Catholics, that was in the monastery and
Yeah,
stuff like that?
the Masoretic text.
Because even the verse that you read off of your phone right there, verse 4, and what does yours say about the angel?
The angel of the Lord.
But mine says for an angel. Steve and
Uh-huh.
I have done a massive study on the King James Bible because we wanted to make sure. I grew up with the Living Bible, which
Yeah.
the pastor that we studied with was like, oh, well, why don't you go here and check out this verse? Oh, why don't you go here and look at these? And it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
My Bible says for an angel. This is not an angel of God.
Mm-hmm.
This is an angel, a fallen angel basically, who's stirring up the water. This section in my notes here is a picture of salvation, because you have
Yes.
people who are impotent and they're blind and they're waiting. Okay,
Yep.
these are before Jesus. Okay, so this angel is going down and stirring up the water
Mm-hmm.
and making them think that it's their own works that are going to get them saved, and if they don't make it there, then they're not going to get saved. So even when you read that other angel of the Lord,
Yep.
no. Okay, yeah, I'm
No,
my
I
hair
understand
is just
that.
standing up on end because of the studying that he and I have done together, and
Yeah.
that movie on YouTube is free. It's a lamp in the dark, and it talks about the foundation of the King James
And I think
Bible.
you're absolutely right. This is why I think some people, I never like it when they totally remove a verse and they don't tell you that. That always bothers me. But a lot of people are uncertain about this one because it seems very weird. So think about it. Why would an angel of the Lord be stirring up these waters and only healing one person at a time? And here's this man who can't get to the waters. And so what most scholars believe is this is a pagan system that's there. So it could be a demon that's going in there. And they are mislabeling it as an angel of the Lord, and they're believing that this is how God is going to heal them, but it's a superstition. And there's been, several interpretations of that where you can actually kind of see that, and it fits in with the culture. When you study this, I think you're dead on, that that's what's happening, that this isn't God that's healing these people, that they're believing this kind of pagan ritual, because then we do have the healer. And if you think about it, this lines up perfectly with the purification and the healing, the turning water into wine at Cana of Galilee, because there they had a purification system, and we talked about how that wasn't in the law. What they're doing there is something that they've added. And so here is another situation where they're doing this ritual, but it's not about the one true God. Now, in this particular situation, I haven't looked up at what the Greek says about angel of the Lord, but I did note that the translations do differ there considerably. And so that definitely makes me question and go, okay, got to do a little bit more study there. But I think that you're absolutely right. Like, this is not a good ritual that's happening. And Jesus is coming in, and he's doing some saving here, which is amazing.
According to this, it says the King James Version was adopted in 1611
Yeah.
on the Textus Receptus.
Yes.
And then they went back, as you said, to older text, which they took. They didn't have this.
Yes.
So that is what they're saying. So that's why some of this has been eliminated. So it wasn't really taking out. It's just that somebody tried clarifying, at least according to this, and instead they went back to the original.
Yeah. And there's considerable debate about which groups of texts should we go with. And the Textus Receptus that means the received text. And that's what the King James, so they were like, that this is, they believe, and I'm going to guess, because I've studied some of this, that documentary that you're referencing is talking about the Textus Receptus. And so many people believe, like, that's really what we should be going off of, and that there's many other manuscripts and those kind of things, and maybe we shouldn't be leaning that direction. I'm not coming down one way or the other, but I think it's very important that we study the verses that later translations have removed or moved to a footnote or something like that. I think that's important. Yeah.
Could that have been a copyist edition, because John is written after the temple is gone?
Could be.
To explain that tradition to people who wouldn't know about it.
We do see a lot of copy editions. In fact, I did get, during my master's program, it was really fun because we got to see some scrolls, a Genesis scroll, right? And you can actually see the copyists putting in footnotes that are in there and kind of explaining some things in the margin, kind of like we have, commentator notes or references, cross-references, and those kind of things. So it could be kind of an explanatory thing, like here's the situation, here's what they believe. That's what some scholars write about this. They think, okay, this was added by somebody later to help understand it. That's why it wasn't in the originals.
Or for Gentiles to understand.
Maybe Gentiles, but yeah, we don't know
So
for
can you
certain.
tell me again what that verse said? An angel would come down, dip his finger in the pool and stir it.
Stirring it up. Yeah.
And then what was after that?
The person that gets into the water first is the one that's healed.
Okay.
And so here you have this lame man who's not able to do that, right? Somebody else gets into the water.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else about this? I know this is a hard conversation, and I appreciate your honesty with it. It's a difficult one to talk about, but I think we need to talk about it. But anything else? Yes?
Well, Jesus didn't know if the guy was a believer or not. He just kind of chose him out at random, didn't he?
Jesus would know.
Well,
and
of course, yeah.
right,
but-
he has a
But
divine
to our
appointment.
human eyes.
But yes, to our eyes, yeah, it seems like a random person, but this is, a divine appointment, just like we've seen before. Yeah.
And Jesus, whenever he did anything, he always said, I'm doing what the Father tells me to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's not doing something of his own choice. God is telling him to do that.
That's right. That is, and he's actually going to tell us that here in a minute.
Oh.
So yeah,
I think
you're
we
absolutely
skipped
right.
over a little bit how long this guy's been sitting out that pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
30, almost 40 years.
Yeah.
40 years. That's
Yes.
a long, long, long time.
Yes.
I mean, someone brought him and picked him up every
Mhm.
night
Mm-hmm.
to take
That's
him.
a long
Yeah,
time.
that is.
Yeah.
He would have been a beggar, and he could have been a beggar right there.
To just his emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where would you, I mean, we read these stories and we sometimes fail to put humanity behind them. I mean,
Yes.
anybody here want to do that?
No.
40 years? I'm 63. That means since I was
Yeah.
23 to this present day
Yeah.
that
That's
I
right.
blame trying to get to a false hope for salvation.
Wow.
You know, I mean, he's been there 40 years, probably longer than everybody. And Jesus goes, "You want to be whole? You want to be made
Yeah.
whole?" Can you imagine that statement?
Yes.
This guy walks up to you and goes, "Hey, you want to be made whole again?"
Yeah.
And he's
Look
all
at.
concentrating on a false hope.
Let's look at that verse. Do you want to be made whole again, or do you want to get well? Jesus responds to him, right? He realizes he's been there a long time. That's, I mean, just put yourself in that situation. I think that's amazing, right? Like, because what? Of course I want to be made well.
But back at that history time, I think he asked it for two reasons. His job was a beggar, because
Mhm.
if you're disabled, that was their job.
That's
Mhm.
what he wrote.
Now all of a sudden, he's healed, he wants to be healed, but he no longer will have a job.
Yeah,
He has
that's a
to
good point.
find
Yeah,
something
it's
to do.
different.
He has no training, he has to support himself. So if you think of it in terms of that, it gets scary.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we all know he wanted to be healed, but there was more to think about than just a sign.
Yeah.
And it gets scary.
It's 40 years is long, 40 years.
Yeah,
is always
I
long
mean,
anyway.
It's a known factor, and now you're going into something different. So
Yeah. Exactly.
he has to find a job now, and he has no thing to do. He has to learn a craft.
Plus,
This
like,
is,
Yeah.
this is one place where Jesus initiates the healing
Yes.
conversation
Yeah.
versus almost all the others, people
Come
come
to that.
asking,
That's
Yeah.
true.
Mm-hmm.
but Jesus initiates this.
Yes.
but every single time, I think as an application, every single time, I mean, it has to be something we want or we
Yes.
make that contact.
Mhm.
Even if he went to him, he has to say, yes, I want that.
Yes.
Yes.
I
And
agree.
it's who you're
Right.
trusting.
But Jesus always goes first.
Uh-huh.
We don't go to Jesus first. He
Well,
always
yeah, because he doesn't immediately think that he's talking about Jesus healing him. Maybe
Yeah,
No,
look at this, verse 7. He says, "Sir," the disabled man answered, "I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm coming, someone goes down ahead of me." And so, well, hey, here's this tradition. Here's this thing. Like, I can't do it. That wasn't really what Jesus asked. Like, do you want to be made? Not like, what can you do in your own power to get well? It's not what he asked, right?
I didn't ask if anybody was helping him.
Yes. Get up, Jesus told him, which I just think about.
40 years,
Get up.
his muscles didn't work, and now they work.
Yeah. Jesus told him, "Pick up your mat and walk." Instantly, the man got well, picked up his mat, and started walking. Wow. That is powerful right there. So, the faith that it takes him, and this is so fast compared to, even think of the conversation with Nicodemus and the woman at the well that were confused for quite a long time. He's confused for one verse. "Sir, I've no one to put me in the water." Jesus says, "Get up." He has faith and he does it. Immediately he's healed.
And can you imagine if we're sick in bed for 40 years, everything's a trophy.
Yeah.
Now everything's
what?
working.
Atrophied.
Atrophy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, because you consider like how much you're in the hospital for a little while, you have to do physical therapy for
Yeah.
all this time.
Exactly.
So think of 40 years and everything's gonna be,
Yeah.
He had no physical therapy.
Hmm.
He stood up.
So is this sign number 3?
This is sign number 3. Yes. Sign number 3.
I think it's interesting, the whole verse though. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you.
Yes. Let's get there. We're not quite there
I'm
yet, but
sorry.
that's an interesting one. So let's continue this story here. I probably today will end in verse 16. We'll see. We may get a little bit further. Okay, so we are in, he got well, the end of verse 9. "Now that day was the Sabbath. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, 'This is the Sabbath. The law prohibits you from picking up your mat.' And I do want to just pause and say, I'm amazed that they just spoke to him, because according to their added law, not the actual Sabbath, but according to their added law, he should have been stoned on sight for doing that. That's not in the original. That's not what Moses
Jesus or
wrote. No, the people.
layman?
So, well, Jesus too, probably, but
Okay.
this man who's carrying his mat.
Okay.
They were not supposed to carry items from a public place to a private place on the Sabbath. Not according to the scriptures. This is something that they added, and the punishment for that was death. So it's amazing that they're talking to him
Would
about
they
it.
have done that on the Sabbath?
That's a good question. I imagine
Is
they
that
would
counted
have.
as
It
a word?
that would be, yeah, I'm killing someone with stones. But apparently that's more righteous. But I mean, that's what Jesus is trying to expose. He goes after their man-made Sabbath really hard, and here's one example where he does that. Verse 11, he replied, "The man who made me well told me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" And they know who this guy is. They've seen him laying there for 38 years. Verse 12, "Who is the man that told you, 'Pick up your mat and walk'?" they asked. But the man who healed did not know who it was, because Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. After this, Jesus found him in the temple, and this is what Ed was talking about, so let's discuss this verse. "See, you are well. Do not sin anymore, that something worse doesn't happen to you." The man went and reported to the Jews that it was Jesus that had made him well. Therefore, the Jews began persecuting Jesus because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. So this is the direct confrontation now with the religious leaders over the idea of the Sabbath. Okay, so we'll get into the teaching that Jesus does here. Maybe we'll have a little bit of time today, but definitely next week. But what do you make of that verse 14? What is Jesus saying there?
It's kind of the thing where you want to don't just depend on grace and then you can do whatever you want to do because grace is gonna forgive you. Is it? You think that's related to that?
Yeah, I think that it's related. What we should, let me ask this as a question to the group. Do you think he's saying that sin made him sick to begin with?
No.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Why not?
Okay, so I have in my notes, like I said, that this whole situation is a picture of salvation. So, rise, take up thy bed, and walk. Okay, so you need to take up thy bed. To me, feels like okay, you're gonna have a cross to carry. You need to take that with you, all right, and move forward. So, and on the same day was the Sabbath. Okay, so a day of rest in the finished work of Christ. Then we have immediately the Jews, therefore, going against him. That's immediate opposition.
Yeah,
The minute
that's
you
good.
come to Christ, don't think for a second the devil's not going to go after you. All right, he's going to be like, oh, dang it, I lost that one. Going after that one, I want them because Satan loves to steal away from Jesus. He doesn't worry about the lost; they're already his. But he will go after the ones that follow Christ. So you immediately face opposition. Then the gentleman answered and said, "The same man, he made me whole and told me to take up my bed and walk." Obey God. I don't care what opposition's coming against you, you obey God. Then afterward, Jesus finds him in church, in the temple. Tells him he's whole, tells him to sin no more, which again you said is not because he wasn't being punished for his sin, it's just that you now are walking a different path. So keep that in your mind and don't go live in the same life you were before. Be different.
Sanctification.
Okay?
Yeah, grace.
Because the worst thing that might come to you is that you go right back into that area.
Yes.
You know, it's like the verse that talks about that those devils will come after you even harder.
Yeah.
You know, when you go back in there, you thought it was all washed clean, and then you walk back in there again, and they're going to come at you 7 times worse. And you need to go out and you need to testify and tell others, and that's verse 15.
Yeah, that's a
My notes.
beautiful picture of
But
salvation.
why does he go back to the Pharisees or
Good question.
and
Wasn't
say to them it was Jesus?
Because he was taught to go cleanse himself because he was right to the temple.
Yeah, but I think her question specifically is then why in verse 15 does he go back to the Jews and say, "Oh, it was Jesus that healed me," because they had asked him earlier.
Because then they started persecuting
Listen,
Jesus.
would you, if you knew of a miracle that someone was healed, wouldn't you think you'd want to tell everyone,
Yeah.
including them, saying it's a
Yeah.
good thing?
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't have understood if I was trying to tell you a good thing, all of a sudden you're making it bad. I wouldn't understand it.
God didn't say don't tell
Probably
anybody.
true, because he probably didn't realize that
He would,
They
in
were
fact,
gonna
he
persecute.
Right,
was healed
right.
without the faith, because he did have to believe that he could stand and something made him feel it. But he didn't even know who the man was that
Right.
healed him. So
Right.
he did,
Yeah.
but to me, he was so excited, and someone's asking him, who healed you?
Uh-huh.
You would go back and you would tell, who healed you?
I guess we can see that they were bad guys, but
Right.
he wouldn't know.
These
it.
are his religious leaders, right?
Yeah,
These are the people he's
right.
looking up to, and he wants them to know. Jesus had slipped away because remember, he's going to individuals who are believing, and the crowd as a whole were not believing. So he slipped away and then found this man again to the individual work that Jesus has in our lives, the personal relationship. So he's personally seeking, I mean, literally discipling this man right here,
Jesus
right in
knew
sanctification.
What he was gonna say.
But
Yeah.
you know, sometimes Jesus told people that he healed, do not go tell anybody.
Yes, that's the messianic secret. And again, it goes back to because he knows the heart of man. He knows the people who are going to hear his voice and those that don't. Steve, what were you going to say?
I just, going back to verse 14, I agree with Brina about salvation. It says,
Mhm.
behold, thou art made whole. Colon. It's a colon there. I think what it means, just because we profess our faith in the Lord and get baptized and put him up as our Savior, doesn't mean there's not going to be thorns and thistles. There's still not going to be challenges. Things are still bad. Things are still going to come your way.
Yeah.
It's lean on what Pastor was talking about earlier. You got to lean on the Lord and not yourself.
Right.
So he's been made whole, even though we're saved through salvation. Doesn't mean that we can fall from grace and still go do things and fall back into traps and all that. So he also said that to the girl, I think, if I remember correctly, who they wanted to stone.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
Go
so
and sin no
hey,
more.
I don't condemn you either. Sin no more.
Yeah.
So it's he can say, the salvation that he gives us ultimately saves us. But it doesn't mean that we're going to struggle down here in
Right.
the meantime.
That's right.
Snares and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
listen to what y'all are talking about at the beginning of this thing. All these burdens you're carrying for your children and your health and all that. So many times, and I've seen this so many times in my life, people will use infirmities or what happens down here to blame God and go away from Him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because what kind of loving God would do that?
What kind of a loving God would let this guy go for 38 years
Yeah.
and not heal him? Because he wanted to heal him right here.
Yeah,
That
I
was
mean,
his time.
this is a big story. It's not like somebody's been hanging out at the pool for a couple of weeks and got healed.
Right.
Everybody knows who this guy
Yes.
is, and all of a sudden he's up walking around. Who did this?
Okay. And here's the other thing, the other side of this that we may not want to talk about. Jesus didn't heal the other people there.
No, he didn't.
And then, when we studied Acts several months ago, we saw Peter and John healing a lame man, different area, and Jesus would have walked by that man every time he went to the temple. He chose not to heal him because he knew Peter and John are going to come
Yeah.
by, and they're going to do that work.
Wow.
It's just like today, Jesus allows what he allows.
That's right.
And we can't have his mind. We don't understand everything.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why if a married couple has a homosexual child,
Mhm.
engaged in sodomy, and one endorses it and one doesn't, that'll split that marriage up so fast. I mean, it's like people lose children.
Mhm.
It sometimes ends a marriage too.
Yeah.
So it's
I was just thinking that the stop sinning,
Mhm.
if that he was taking part in a pagan ritual, that would be the stop
Yeah,
sinning
yeah.
reference.
But it's also, we don't know if he was believing Jesus because he didn't know Jesus, and so Jesus came back and made sure
Sure
he
he knew.
understood.
Yes.
Right, I
That
agree.
Yes.
this is a spiritual thing.
Yes.
Because he didn't introduce it at first, it was just the physical.
Yes.
Right.
I think that's a good point to make. Yes.
Yes.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's like,
Mm.
remember me?
Yeah.
And Jesus was
Hey,
showing
see
that
you
to
again.
us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jesus was showing us, he already knew.
Yes, he did. Yeah. This is so encouraging that the several stories that we have here. The woman at the well, Jesus went right there to her. He didn't have to, but he knew, I got to go talk to this woman. Met her exactly where she's at, challenged her, but met her exactly where she's at. And then healed this royal official's son from a distance, and now here we have this double healing, we'll say, spiritual and physical healing of this man who's been lame for 38 years, and Jesus again, that individual. So I hope that encourages you this week, the individual presence of God and how he knows you and knows the suffering that you and your family members are going through, that describes you, knows all of the silent unspoken requests and all of those kind of things. And sometimes he heals physically, sometimes it's a spiritual healing.
Well, Paul was
And
never healed.
that's right, yeah. Paul multiple times, Lord, take away this thorn in my flesh. And God said, no, my strength is made perfect in weakness, right? Or my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness, right? Yeah. Next week, we're going to start in verse 17 in chapter 5. And this is a situation where Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and he's going to reveal a lot about himself. And this is a great time for us to kind of dig into some teaching that Jesus does. What's he saying? Some of it seems a little bit of a challenge to understand, but we'll really get into the thoughts of the Pharisees and understand what they're thinking. But we'll also get to look at the deity of Jesus. Not that we haven't seen that before, because who can do these things that he does except God?
It kind
Right.
of feels like John picked the ones that are showing points of Jesus' character.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that
Is
from-
this, the whole book of John, is this all you think chronologically?
Yeah, it's chronological. Some people have wondered how chronological it is because of the cleansing of the temple that happens early. But the best way to solve that is that there's two of them. He does one at the beginning of his ministry and then one at the end of his ministry. But otherwise, it seems pretty chronological. He just kind of skips over some time because it's episodic, right? I want to tell you this story, this story, this story.
Okay.
7 signs, and then also, 7 I am statements, 2
So-
conversations, and a number of other teaching
I
passages.
wasn't here last week, but the healing of the woman at the well, that was not considered a sign.
So that was one of the dialogues that he has. So he doesn't heal her, but he talks to her.
Okay.
And so we have 2 of those back to back, one with Nicodemus, so a long conversation with him, and a long conversation with the woman. Those are kind of 2 one-on-ones that we get in John. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and pray, and let's end for the day. Lord God, I thank you so much for your word. Thank you for how powerful it is, and your word is truth. There's so many lies that are out there today. Lord, help us to trust your word. Help us to lean into you through our struggles. Help us to believe you and have faith that you are working in our lives. Lord, help the ones that we know that are straying, that they would see your truth and your power and reveal yourself to them, I ask in your name. Amen.